Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome back to part 2 of our 4-part Yellow Turban character guide series. In this guide, we will be covering the Scholar class, so let's get started. As we discussed in part 1, the Scholar class has 5 distinct backgrounds as shown here in the Brewer: Builder, Farmer, Jade Carver, and Potter. Today, we will dive deeper into each of these backgrounds by looking at their respective skill trees. So as a reminder, since all 5 backgrounds are Scholar backgrounds, all the skill trees will share 4 Scholar passive skills, so it's best we review them first before we move on. Starting from the left, we have Insight, which is a skill I like to rush on all my characters, as the 10% research rate is extremely helpful for your campaigns, as you're able to unlock new reforms faster. In terms of combat, it does also grant the character 8% range block chance, but on higher difficulties, none of the enemy range retinue units will fire at your generals, so this will only help situationally when enemy generals are holding onto a bow, which is not all that common. Next, we have Inspiration, which is a great skill for your economy, as it provides a faction-wide 6% boost to commerce income. In terms of combat, it enables Encourage on the general itself, which will provide a morale bonus to nearby allies. Continuing on, we have Integrity, which gives the character 20 points of satisfaction and 20% corruption reduction in local commandery. While Insight and Inspiration are skills that I will take on all Scholars, Integrity is more situational, because satisfaction is only ever an issue in the early game when you lack the necessary reforms and buildings to help keep your characters happy. And although Yellow Turbans lack a lot of the base game corruption reduction buildings like the State Workshop and the Administrative Office, you are still limited by army count, assignment slots, and local leader positions to be able to field enough characters to rely on Integrity to manage your corruption throughout your kingdom. If you happen to have a Scholar who is a local leader though, then this would be a nice skill to take, as it can be combined with the local leader 30% corruption reduction bonus to hit 50% reduction to corruption right away. But outside of local leader roles, I tend to avoid this skill entirely. Finally, we have Resolution, which reduces local county construction time by 1 turn and gives 15.2 melee evasion for the character. The construction time reduction is great in the early game, when this is the easiest way to speed up your commander development and thus your economy, but as the game progresses, reforms and assignments are much better ways to reduce construction time. So this skill, like Integrity, is a bit situational, because the 2 bonuses are also a bit contradictory, as the melee evasion is centered around combat bonus, while construction time is more suited for a non-combatant role. You can still abuse this skill on utility characters, as you can get rid of their retinues and redeploy them for free throughout your kingdom to speed up construction wherever you please. Now that we covered these 4 Scholar passive skills, let's also take a quick look again at the 3 Scholar active abilities in Condemn, Inner Fire, and Preach. Of these 3, all Scholars will start with Inner Fire level 1, so let's also start here. Inner Fire is a simple passive buff that grants the character 33% melee attack rate. It will help your character to be a little stronger in duels, but it is not a huge bonus. Next we have Condemn, which is a splash damage active ability that also reduces enemy melee evasion by 50%. This is mainly a dueling skill, but it can also be helpful to clear enemy retinues with the splash attack. Lastly, we have Preach, which is an active buff that grants nearby allies a 50% armor boost and a 15% melee evasion boost. One thing to note here is that since you can only learn 11 out of the 15 skills on any given skill tree, if you do not plan on using the character on the battlefield, then Condemn and Preach are definitely 2 skills that you can safely ignore, as you will only be able to use them on the battlefield itself. Okay. Now that we have reviewed all the skills that are shared by all 5 Scholar backgrounds, let's actually look at some skill trees to see what make each of them so unique. Starting with the Brewer, we can see the background adds 5 points to Resolve, Cunning, and Instinct, which are the 3 colors not included on the Scholar color scheme of being purple and yellow. So this will lead to a character who is more well-rounded in all 5 stats, but that's really not ideal, as we're looking for more specialized characters. The leadership bonus for Brewer is plus 4 point to public order. I find this bonus to be pretty bad for the Yellow Turbans, as they have some of the best building options to deal with public order when compared to the base game factions. The nice thing here to note about the skill tree at first glance is that you start out with the skill Insight at level 1, so Brewers are great character to recruit as soon as you see them, because they are essentially a free boost to research rate right away. Before we look at the rest of the skill tree, we need to talk about Builder and Jade Carver background real quick, because as you can see, these three backgrounds actually share the exact same skill tree. The only thing that separates them is their passive stat boost and leadership bonuses from their background, and the random traits on the character themselves. Starting with the Builder, we have plus 5 points to Resolve, Cunning, and Authority. The extra Authority stat make this background a little bit better for the leadership role, but the bonus of -2 construction time is once again lackluster, as it does fall off quite a bit once you reach fully developed commanderies, and the fact that Yellow Turbans have so many other ways that are more efficient at reducing construction time. The Jade Carver here increases Expertise, Resolve, and Cunning by 5 points each, but the leadership bonus of +3 reserve faction-wide is just terrible. So now that we identified the small differences between these three backgrounds that shares the same skill tree, let's dive deeper into this exact skill tree to better define a role for all three of these scholar backgrounds. So aside from the same 3 active ability and 4 scholar passive skills, the other 8 skills you will find on their skill tree are Opportunism and Focus from the Veteran class, Defiance and Tranquility from the Healer class, and Meditation, Endurance, Precision, and Intuition from the base game. Now, since that we will be making guides on the Veteran Healer classes later this week, and we already have guides on the base game skills, we're not going to be going through all of these like we just did for the Scholar skills. Instead, I will just present the result of my analysis for these 3 backgrounds and show you guys some ideal roles and builds for them. The first build here is the Archery Master Battlefield build. This build is for characters that will be generals in your army, who will field 6 units of Archery Masters. Now, Archery Masters are the most powerful archer units available to the Yellow Turbans. You can see them as slightly weaker versions of the Onyx Dragon from the base game, but they perform the same role, as they outrange regular archers by 25 meters. This unit has strong rate of fire, high range damage, and high ammo count, as well as the ability to use fire arrows. However, one of its weaknesses is that it's still outranged by crossbow unit, as well as poor performance against heavily armored and shielded unit, as most of the damage is on the base range damage rather than armor piercing damage. Now in this build, we have Meditation and Tranquility skills on all your generals, which give them the unbeatable combination of Unbreakable and Recovery. With this combination, you can never lose defensive battles with battle timers, as you can always outlast your opponents by kiting and healing for the entire duration of the battle without suffering morale loss. Even on offense, this is an amazing combination for any general. Combined with your Inner Fire and Condemn abilities, you will have extra melee attack rate and a very nice dueling damage output ability that will make you one of the better duelists in the Yellow Turban army. For your range units, you get additional 25% range armor piercing damage, which will help shore up the Archery Master's weakness against armored enemies, as well as additional 10% to the base range damage, which is already quite high. The Opportunism skill will also enable fire arrows and increase post-battle loot by 50%. Now there are other small bonuses to armor and such, but I find these 6 bonuses to be most relevant for the 6 Archery Mastery composition for the Scholar class. Now, since Yellow Turbans has only 3 classes, each class will have more than one ideal army composition when compared to the generals from the base game. So for the Scholar class, another excellent late game unit is the Scholar Warriors, which as you see here is a sword wielding unit that is very similar to a Pearl Dragon in the base game, as it has high damage, high evasion, and even 40% range block chance despite not holding a shield. Additionally, this unit has fatigue immunity and high morale, so it's very powerful. If you choose to run a Scholar Warrior, or basically a melee composition for your Scholar class, then you might also want to consider one additional unit that is also exclusive to the Scholar class in the Chanter. Now as you can see here, the Chanter is a very weak unit by itself, with almost no damage to speak of, and no armor, but it functions as a support unit that has Encourage and a passive buff called Sacred Chance, which will boost melee damage and armor for nearby units, which the Scholar Warrior will benefit heavily from. My advice is to still field 6 Scholar Warriors on your high level Scholar General and have a second army following, with low level Scholar providing 1 Chanter or maybe 2, along with some cheap Archer unit with Fire Arrow. In our Scholar Warrior build, we will take the 11 skills highlighted here in yellow. Aside from the bonuses we already discussed from the overlapping skills from the Archery Master build, this build will boost Scholar Warriors by additional 5% melee armor piercing damage and add 10% armor. And for your generals, you will have another 15 melee evasion, which will make them an even better duelist. For non-combatants, you can follow this idol or local leader build, which is best suited for Jade Carver background, as it is the only background of the 3 with 5 points to expertise, which will shine in the local leader role. Now, if you follow this build, you will have 10% research rate, 15% to industry income for local leaders, minus 20% corruption, minus 1 construction time, 3% to peasantry, 6% to commerce, and 3% to industry, as well as 56 bonus expertise point to help you in a local leader role. As you probably have noticed here, scholars in general as a class excels at idle court characters, who you can just level up and ignore in your court while they provide tremendous faction-wide bonuses like the ones highlighted here. Moving on, we have the farmer background, which adds 10 points to resolve and 5 points to instinct, which kind of hints that they could be good generals since these stats are all combat related. And in terms of leadership bonuses, we have 10% to peasantry income. While this is decent, we can do much better in terms of leadership bonuses, as you will see very soon in this guide. So let's continue. Now, this skill tree here is different from the one we just analyzed for the other 3 classes. To start, the level 1 skill is now Inspiration, which is still very nice. It's not as good as 10% research rate, but we're still getting a nice boost to commerce income from this skill. Additionally, the other 8 skills have now changed to Focus and Subtlety from Veteran class, Charisma and Defiance from the Healer class, Clarity, Abundance, Diligence, and Intuition from the base game. Revisiting our Archery Master build and adapting it for this skill tree, we can see that it's no longer as good because we lost Precision and Opportunism, which decreases our overall damage. We also no longer have Fire Arrows, and our generals lost both Unbreakable and Recovery. We did gain Night Battle, which is useful, but we lost so much that I can no longer recommend this build for the farmer background. However, because of where the skills are located, we can use Farmer Scholars as a low-level peasant archery spamming unit for cheap defensive armies early on in our game. Next, if we look at the Scholar Warrior build for the farmer background, we see a similar trend where it underperforms the build we previously saw. So in summary, farmers just do not make good generals. Where the farmer background excels at is by being local leaders, as you can see here. With this build, farmers provide 25% discount to building upkeep, which doesn't come very handy for yellow turbans as it only applies to school buildings and specialty counties, but it's still nice to have. Additionally, we have plus 5 food and plus 15 industry income, along with all the nice scholar skill bonuses listed below. Whereas most of this is quite similar to the local leader build we just saw, the extra food productions where this build really separates itself in terms of being a local leader. Now, of course, for roles like local leader, your character's traits are going to matter a lot. So hopefully you get a favorable role for a farmer background to utilize as your ideal local leader. Lastly, farmers also have a decent idle court build, as shown here, with many of the similar passive bonuses as before, because in general, scholars make great idle court characters. Finally, we have the Potter background, which I have already declared in part 1 of our guides that it is the best leadership bonus for the scholar class, with its 10% boost to industry income. In terms of stat, Potters get 5 points to expertise and 10 points to resolve. And on the skill tree, the level 1 free skill now becomes Resolution, which grants -1 construction time in local county. This makes early potters quite useful, as you can summon them and use them as mobile assignments to help speed up your early game build path for the commanderies. In the mid to late game, it's not as great. The 8 skills that are unique to the Potter background are Opportunism and Fanaticism from the Veteran class, Effortless Flow and Tranquility from the Healer class, and Stability, Consideration, Understanding, and Wisdom from the base game. For the Potter, we are not even going to consider our Archery Master build, as they are missing focus and precision skills, but like the Farmer background, you can still put on some cheap peasant archery armies on them, as they do have Fire Arrow from Opportunism. Moving on to the Scholar Warrior build, we can quickly see that the Potter are excellent in this role, as they are the only background with Effortless Flow, which grants the army they're in 10% campaign movement range, and 10% movement speed to your fatigue immune Scholar Warriors. Additionally, you get extra melee damage, replenishment, and post-battle loot with this build. Like the Archery Master build, we are also not going to be considering Local Leader build at all for the Potter background, because it's missing the critical skill of Intuition, which is the single most important skill for local leaders in the Scholar class. So where Potters really shine is the Court plus Leadership build shown here, which includes leadership bonuses such as 10% to industry from the background, as we already discussed. Additionally, you get +1 rank to all new recruit from Understanding, as well as all the passive idle bonuses we have already looked at before for the Scholar class. Now, since there's only one leadership position open in your entire faction for Scholars, most of your other Potters can be made into assignment court characters, as they have 3 base game skills that grant additional assignments, like Counteract Corruption from the Stability skill, Industrial Exploitation from the Understanding skill, and Reward the Filial and Incorrupt from the Wisdom skill, all of which are great assignment to consider in the mid to late game. So, in summary, for the Scholar class, we have 3 distinct skill trees out of the 5 backgrounds. For the Brewer, Builder, and Jade Carver backgrounds, the best build is to make them into generals, running a comp of 6 Archery Masters. Alternatively, the Scholar Warrior build is also decent here, as well as the Jade Carver Local Leader build. Or simply just have them as idle court characters that generate faction-wide bonuses for your entire kingdom. For the Farmer background, the ideal build is the Local Leader build. So whenever you get a new Farmer character, make sure to check the traits for good administrative traits. And if you're wondering what those are, I will link our trait guide in the description below as a reference. Farmers can also be used as early game defensive forces, running cheap peasant archers, as their skill tree placement is ideal for a low level efficient range composition. And once again, as the overarching theme for the entire Scholar class, the Farmer background can also be excellent idle court characters. Lastly, we have the Potter, which is best suited to become your virtuous leader or be used as court assignment characters. They can also be decent Scholar Warrior composition generals, or as always, if the traits end up sucking, just leave it as an idle court character boosting your commerce, peasant, and industry income faction-wide. So this concludes our guide on the Scholar class. Hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth guide, and see you next time when we visit the Healer class. Bye!